Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome to episode 3 of Check the Wire with myself, DanGheesling and Northernlion. Ryan, what's going on, man?
Not too much. Happy to be here.
It feels shorter. It doesn't feel shorter if you're listening, but for us, it's the gap is not a week.
Dude, I kind of like it though, because like the video went out, like episode 2 went out yesterday. We get feedback on it, and then the next day we're out here like taking action on the feedback again.
So speaking of that, what's at the top of your head of like last episode? We're like, okay, hey, center and get the names right. Those were like the two reverberating. What's like reverberating in your head and how we want to make this one better?
Honestly, I feel like the feedback from episode 2 was a lot more, I don't want to say like positive because it's always been pretty positive, but more like, hey, I really like what you've got going on here, and less like, hey, you should really switch the names so I know who's talking and stuff like that. I don't really feel like we had too much where people were like, I don't really like this direction. People seem excited.
Yeah, no, and that's why if you've left any feedback, thank you. And I think this proves it's not just endless talking. Whatever you say, we listen to it and execute on it. And I know I've done that from like day one, well, not day one, but early on YouTube and Twitch. And I think you're starting to do that a lot too, right? On your stuff.
I'm starting to be better about it for sure. I'm starting to, there were years where I didn't look at the comments at all. And it's not even like this is such a huge topic too, to get in right off the bat, but there are a lot of YouTubers who are like, never read your comments at all because it's only going to tilt you and like put you in a bad mood. That wasn't really why I did it. It was more like, what do I expect to see in episode 900 of the same game I've played 100 times? Like, I don't know if there's going to be much value there. But I've been looking at it a lot more often and trying to like respond to people, mostly just on this philosophy that like, being responded to just kind of feels nice. I think it reinforces the community aspect to some extent.
Yeah, 100%. And I noticed you kind of slipped a Jimmy into your comments on the second.
Excuse me.
Because I look at your video, so the video for the podcast is hosted on youtube.com/Northernlion. And so I look at it and just read the feedback. And I saw you did something kind of slick. It's like, hey, this time, if there's something you like specifically about the podcast, timestamp it so we can learn what you like. Where did that come from for you? And then what did you, after executing on that, what did you take away from that?
Dude, people are going to roll their eyes, but that's from TikTok. Like,
really?
Because the way that I've been making content for that platform is just looking at what clips got like popular, got the most views, and then cutting that up and putting it on that platform. But then like, for YouTube stuff, it's so hard to discover it because there's like 3 hours of unedited content. So instead of like, haha, this is a funny video, I was trying to get people specifically to be like, oh, 2605 to 28. That's like, that really spoke to me so that I can go into the comments like a little rat and start cutting up the content so we can advertise the podcast a little bit more readily on Twitter, basically.
So, but then the other thing is like you responded to some of them, right?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I read all of them up to like 12 hours ago, and definitely when we start pushing like episode 3 or like this weekend, maybe I'll make a tweet saying like, hey, go back and check out episode 2. I'll look at some of those. But it makes the job a lot easier. Plus, it is nice to know what resonates with people so that we can focus on that stuff more in the future.
Yeah, I think I was pretty sharp to do it. We didn't talk about it. I'm just like, oh, that's something I hadn't seen you do before. But it also, like you said, it makes our job a little bit easier, not only from the distribution standpoint of like TikTok or Twitter or anything, but just to know what to talk about. And some of the things, I don't know about you, it surprised me. It was like and I think it probably speaks to me is like I was thinking about like, why do I always pivot and ask people questions? And I think part of the reason is like, you put a lot of stuff out there, you kind of open yourself up a little bit, where I'm like, hey, I got my armor, I know I'm exposed here and here, I'm good about it. But there's some stuff like I talked about that in the episode 2, if you haven't listened to, by the way, that I didn't talk about. So I don't know if that plays in anything for you, but I don't know where it is in my head, but I think sometimes that's why I deflect a lot. But
yeah, I can understand it. I mean, I think like one of the things that's cool about this is that like everything I do is soaked in irony, like to the extreme. Like I'm not almost never sincere, but oftentimes there's like layers of humor and also like putting on a character, stuff like that. So this is actually an opportunity to be like open and even vulnerable about things. And it's a little intimidating and scary, but also I have to imagine at this point, anybody that would listen and be like, screw these guys, they're probably just They got bored halfway through episode 1 and haven't come back. So I think we're safe.
Well, you bring up something that isn't on our like punch list of stuff to talk about. We talk about like playing a character. How much of you on the NLSS and you in videos is a character, and how much is like you?
That's a good question. I can't wait to flip this back to you, by the way. Because I feel like you're playing a character, you're in character like 100% of the time. I'm assuming. I'm going to ask specifically because one of the questions I get asked all the time is, how do you think Dan speaks to his family? Does he talk the same way that he talks to Team Unity? But anyway, we'll get to that. But I don't know. Like I think I'm pretty genuine, honestly. But the way I would describe it is that like in video and on the NLSS, I just say the things that I wouldn't say in public, if you know what I mean. Like sometimes if I'm like meeting somebody in public, a joke that might razz them a little bit pops into my head, but I just go, it's not appropriate for this time and place. But on the stream, I'm like, oh, that'll be great. That'll be entertaining.
I got to push back on you because the first time I ever met Ryan, we're sitting in a cafe, and it's like the first time it's me, Mathis, Kate, who's Ryan's wife, and myself. And I'm like, hey, man, he made this video. It's like, hey, the best tips to make YouTube videos or whatever. It's a 20-minute video. And one of the first things I said, I'm like, hey, it's nice to meet you. That video really helped me. And he's like, yeah, thanks for the 5 cents. And I'm like, all right, I'll give him the first one for free. But that sounds like one of those jokes that you let slip out versus.
I still think that one's pretty good, honestly.
It is a good one.
I mean, I think the way that you say it is like, thanks for the 5 cents. And that comes across kind of badly. But like, oh, thanks for the 5 cents.
That is how you said it, just like you just did. And I'm like, okay. I didn't know how to take it, so we just kept moving on, and good thing we did. But so you think?
No, I want to ask you how much of the way that because you construct the way I understand it, you construct your brand, for lack of a better word, online around being entertaining, which is probably not the philosophy you would take in your home life and your business life, would be my expectation. So I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I guess the way, and I think it came over time, but having a background in reality TV and trying to figure out how to get on TV, I remember shooting some videos and just talking kind of like this and normal, and it's like, man, that looks really boring on TV. So over time, you kind of learn what, like, if you're more physical, like it's like 10x physical, you look kind of normal on TV versus like super boring. But I think outside of that, and I was thinking about this the other day, is, I make up a lot of words and I'm really goofy on this show, but that's really me. But it's me in like a very comfortable situation. Like I used to act like that around some of my friends from high school when we play games together, but I don't really act like that at home because it's just a different environment. So I think it's oddly enough, or strangely enough, it's not really putting on a character. It's almost like it's the most non-judgmental, non-caring, not worried about what anyone says. And I feel like it took me to experience some success on YouTube and Twitch to get to that point. But I also feel like not caring is what propelled everything. Like I used to not post stuff on my Instagram because I would be worried like, hey, what does X family member think? And I'm talking like up until like a year or two ago, where I just got to a point I'm like, I don't care. And I, not like that held me back or that I don't care what my family thinks, but I really don't care what they have to say about what I do online. Not that there was never any negative feedback. It was more like inside my head. But when I got rid of that, then it was like stuff started to take off. But I don't know how we got on that topic. But
let's say it's an interesting philosophy that you're almost, I don't want to say you're more comfortable on stream than you are in your home life, because that's ridiculous, but that you're kind of like at the same level of comfort or intimacy with your stream that you are to like your group of close friends.
Yeah, that's very true. And socially, which is I think the part people may have a hard time comprehending. If I'm at a party, like that's like I'm talking to maybe one person at a time, and like I don't like being around a lot of people and in a group setting. It's just not that I don't like it, I'm just not wired that way. And I'm very much an introvert, and people are like, yeah, right. No, it's not. That's really how I am. And it's something I like. It's not a battle, but I'm very self-aware of like, hey, are we going to this family event? Cool. You try to manage it. But
dude, yeah, I understand.
Are you the same way? But whenever we hang out, I guess it's different. You're very outgoing, but are you the same way in social situations? Are you?
Oh yeah. Like Basically, like, so we moved into this place in like October, and people like Corey, for example, is like, are you ever gonna have people over to your house? Like, we bought you a housewarming gift, but you haven't even had anybody over. It's like I'm so protective of my like not working hours. I love to just be alone, or like Kate and I hang out, because that's how I recharge.
Mhm.
Even if like I have this almost, it's taken me a long time to realize this too. But if I like work and then I like go out for dinner with like, I don't know, some colleagues or some friends or something like that, I need like that much more time to recharge when I get home as well. It's almost like those are exhausting hours on top of the hours you worked in the first place. So I'm really happy just being at home in kind of like my own bubble.
When did you realize that? Did that happen? Like you put on a good show and then you went out to eat and you're like, was there a moment where you're out to eat and you're like, man, I got to get out of here? Or this, like, when did there's got to be a story I saw your
There's
face.
there's no linchpin story of like when I noticed it, but I just like, especially, I don't know, probably over like the last 5 or 6 years, anytime we're like out, the number one thing I'm focused on is like, when is it socially acceptable for me to leave this place? Like, even if we go out for dinner and it's like, I finish my food faster than Kate and Kate's still eating, I'm like, I gotta go. We gotta get out. What are we doing here? It's not, like, this is just, I could be sitting, and I'm not saying this is fair, by the way, to Kate especially, but I could be sitting in a chair at home, relaxing, instead of sitting in this, public place where, I don't know, I'm not on edge, but like I'm not as relaxed.
So I'm not here to give you tips, but I'm gonna peel back the layer and give you I have a go-to move and then also something that helped me with that. So I'm kind of like inverse with my wife. I don't want to get too much but she's very social and I'm not. And you said something about charging batteries. So like I charge my batteries like you, like being alone, just chill. And she's kind of the inverse. She likes being around a lot of people. So I got to move if we're out and we're with people and it's time to go. I'll just go up behind her and give her like just a quick double tap, no words, no looks. And it kind of like starts the process. But on the flip side, I also found out what's kind of helped me in social situations that, you're like, it's like if there's an event or something to do, then I'm good. But if it's like, hey, let's go over to this person's house and talk, I'm like, I can do that for a half an hour. But if we play cards or a board game or go see a play or something, then that's really helped me. So I'm gonna go on a limb and say maybe there's some other people listening that are kind of like that. But for me, that was like a game changer. Like, hey, bring a deck of cards in your car. It really makes things. For me, it made things a lot more like manageable. Not that it's not manageable, but I'd say more fun.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense.
so going from that to, I wanted to bring up I would call it a botched launch, but
I wanted to. All I saw in the document was botched launch, and I want to know what this is.
So we started the podcast, and you and I we're just we're figuring out, we're throwing stuff against the wall, and essentially what we came to is that Ryan would post a video on youtube.com/Northernlion, and I would post the show on my normal podcast feed. And after like the first couple hours of episode 1, the feedback and also just taking a step back to think about like, man, this was not the best way to do it. So essentially, this is a good time to announce from now on, from this episode on, it's on its own separate podcast feed on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud. You can still watch the VOD on Ryan's channel. But I don't know, we got to that point because I think a lot of feedback, and also I just took a step back and I'm like, and this is what we stopped talking about off camera before we got on, is we'll get messages like, hey, will you put on this, and this platform? And for me, I look at that and I'm like, it's my job or our job to make people listening to this as frictionless as possible. If they want to watch it on Google Play, we'll find a way to get it there. But I just feel like that was an example early on of something that I decided to do wrong, like something I decided for the podcast. It was the wrong move, but at the same time, I think we both realized we want to do this for a while. So to me, it's not like a devastating thing. It's just something that went wrong that was corrected. I don't know.
I think, well, you and I think, have the same philosophy, which is like, and we've worked with a lot of people that are on the other side of this, and I think it can work out really successfully as well. But some other people are like, we have an idea for a new project. Day zero, there's a website. I tap somebody for a logo. I tap somebody for like assets. And then like when you get started, it's good to go. And I think that's awesome, except sometimes you screw yourself in situations where you only make like 2 episodes of something, or like it self-destructs after like 3 months. You and I think, are kind of more like, hey, let's just like do it a couple of times, and if it catches, if it gets some traction, then we can worry about like the polish stuff at the end of the day. So I think we did it that way, just because that's kind of like the way our DNA for like content creation goes. But definitely the time is right to get it on its own thing for sure.
It's weird. There's some things that you've said that are like burned into my gray matter. And one of the things is, I don't know if it was maybe in a Mario Maker episode or something, but we were talking about advice for someone starting out and streaming. And the one thing you always said that I remember is, you're better off just streaming as opposed to making graphics, a logo. Like, you're just make stuff, and then everything else will kind of follow and fall into place. You know, and I guess to make it even more granular, more first grade, it's like, are you going to listen to this podcast because we don't have a logo? No, you're probably still going to listen to it. Will it help down the road if we have a good logo and it's all aggregated? Yeah, but I think the point is just try to make a good show and then catch up.
But I will say, though, that I need people in my life that are the opposite of this. And David is super good about that, what I'm very thankful for.
Who's David, like, for people?
Right, yeah. David is he's my publicist and my manager, so he handles like incoming code requests from developers that are like, please play our game, or, you know, he'll reach out for like sponsorship deals and stuff like that. And he also handles stuff, you know, it's a weird thing to say about what we do, but stuff related to the brand. So like sometimes interview requests from major media outlets will come in, and I'll be like, say no to that because I don't want to do it.
Really?
Well, sometimes, yeah. That's probably for a future show, to be honest. I've said my piece on it in PUBG, but the long and short of it is, I always feel like those stories end up painting streamers in this light where they're like, basically every 2 seconds they get paid $100 from a donator or something like that, and they get framed like whiny babies despite that, which I think is frustrating. But anyway, so he handles all that stuff related to that. So, you know, my natural inclination is like, people want merch. I'm like, why do you want merch? Just watch the videos. You know, why do you want me to change my YouTube banner? Like, you've been watching for like 7 or 8 years. Why do you want me to change my YouTube banner? You're already here. Like, you're already seated in the auditorium. You like the music, and you're like, oh, I really wish they would change the font on the logo. But it's been a struggle for me as I've gotten like further and further along in this, is that's kind of like, you're feeding it back into the community when you put effort into stuff like that, which is why I did the rebrand like in November or October, whenever it was, or June.
Was there something that sparked the rebrand for you? Was there like a comment or a moment where you're like, it is time to redo this?
Well, it's just like both like embarrassment and pride. I was like, without talking down to anybody, there's streamers with like 10 viewers that had a more professional looking setup than I did.
Yeah.
And I kind of just reached the point where I'm like, I would take more pride in this if it looked nicer and slicker. And like, I think the content speaks for itself, but at the same time, if you turned on like CBS, for example, and it was shot like a public access show, you would, if you didn't know what you were getting into, you might be like, this show looks like unprofessional and weird. It's not for me. So it's just kind of like lowering, I guess, that barrier to entry for people, so that they get almost like Trojan horsed into being like, I'll watch like 5 minutes of this, and then hopefully you're hooked for life, and you're watching 300 Isaac episodes a year.
So we were both, we didn't talk about it, but you had started rebranding, and I reached out to the same designer, Jay, who's a mutual friend, Wolves of My Door, does great work. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm working on this for Ryan. As soon as I'm done with that, I'll do yours. And then, but once you did that, because it was interesting to see how you launched it. Because when you launched it, it was like, I don't want to say it was a major impact on the community, of like a flood of influx. How did you decipher? Did that force you to make any changes to the branding, or did you just say, hey, I'm going to pick what I think I like the best, or what the audience is going to like the best, or neither?
We made one change, which is Jay made a dark mode overlay. Mm-hmm. So originally, like, my intermission screen was white, and I don't mind that. Yeah. I use light mode in most things, not Discord, but like on Switch, for example, even. And it never really bothered me. I think people who are a little bit older, you know, we grew up without having the option to change the way a website looked. And most Web 1.0 websites were just pure white backgrounds, or like the Matrix text drip coming down from the ceiling. But so for me, I don't think it's that bad, but people are obviously used to having that option. And I definitely think that was a positive change, and I was stubborn about it, and should not have been as stubborn as I was, but we got it done. Everything else, I just like, I don't know if it's stubbornness or like self-confidence, but I was like, I just, the feedback I think is irrelevant. You know, I really look at what I do as like, I look at it as like a traditional business where I sell a product, and the product is, you know, the stream or the video or whatever. And I don't worry about the branding, which I think is more like the signage and I don't know, like the carpet in the concessions area or whatever. Like, I think all that stuff is ancillary to some extent. But what about you?
You're basically like, hey, does the hamburger taste good? If so, then you don't care as much about the plate it's served on. Just
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think it's served on a plate. I don't think I'm serving it on like a weird, you know, piece of quartz or something like that, or like a metal disc. You know, I guess a plate is a metal disc, but you get what I mean. Like, I think it's everything is functional. And if you're like, oh, what if the plates were gray instead? Then I'm like, you know, I don't think that's relevant.
No, and I think that's fair, because when you make a major shift like that stylistically, I think that's one of the few times, my opinion, one of the few times, unless it's really, really, really one-sided and, hey, this is not good. I think for the most part, it's like everyone's going to have an opinion on it. So that's fine, but you got to have a direction. And it sounds like that's how you had it. You're like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is what we did. And then, you know, I think at this point, you know, I think I saw a post on your subreddit saying that 6 months or a year later, how do we feel about the rebrand? I don't remember what it said.
Yeah, and most people are just like, I might have like a conceptual problem, but I actually have gotten used to it. And I think that's what it is. Like, there's two things I think of. One is like every time YouTube has changed its layout over the years, people have complained. And especially when they complained when it went from like you could personalize like the sidebars and the top banner and the background with your own custom assets. Mm-hmm. People were like, this is gonna like sterilize the entire site. If you go and you look at like what YouTube channels look like in 2010, it's a disaster. It looks like a GeoCities like personal blog, right? Like, I'm not saying all redesigns online have been, you know, good, because I think the new YouTube studio and uploader are non-functional for me, or dysfunctional at least. But, you know, I think people innately are hesitant to change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. But the second thing is, I totally get it, because like I eat Builder's bars, and they changed their branding here like 3 months ago. And I was like, the new bars don't look as good. Like, the label doesn't look as good. And then I thought for like 5 seconds, and I was like, who cares? But my initial reaction is like, I like the guy on the front. Now it's just this weird like silver packaging. I don't get it.
But they even affected you, but the bar tastes the same.
Tastes the same. Yeah. You know? Maybe even a little better, honestly.
All right, so I want to pivot to your next topic, but I'm going to let you slide it in just based on the vernacular you used.
Oh, is this would be number cell 3?
Yeah, cell 3.
Okay. So this happens every now and then. I titled this cell "When You Eat S" on a video. when you So basically what that means is like when you make a mistake in a video and it's clear that you made a mistake and there's like a little blowback, or I guess even a lot of blowback depending on what you're doing and what the mistake is. But like on Monday of what will be last week now, I uploaded a video of this cool game called Death and Taxes that was kind of like Papers, Please, but you're the Grim Reaper. So you get profiles of people that are like, you know, here's their metadata, here's their age, their profession, a little bio about them. And you get a series of rules that are like, kill people that blank, don't kill people that blank. So kill people that are old, don't kill people that work in engineering or something.
Okay.
And you know me, like the first bit of text that you give me in a game, I'll read it 100%. Second bit, I'll read it. Third bit, I start to be like, yeah. To get to the mechanics. And I missed something that was pretty important and actually, to be honest, dampened my overall experience on the game. And I like, it wasn't a super critical thing, but it was enough that it was like, it did dampen the video.
What was it? Sure. What was the
So the whole gist of the game is you're supposed to have these rules for who to kill and who not to kill. But you can also, if you read the profiles, there will be like administrative notes from your boss that are like, I know you're supposed to kill people that are like this, but don't kill this guy specifically. And then I got berated for breaking the rules, like not by comments that will come later, but by like the in-game boss. He was like, you broke the rules. And I was like, I didn't break the rules. I thought I did it perfectly.
And this is all happening on a video with no feedback loop from anyone live.
Exactly. Which is, and I tried to stress that if it happened on Twitch, people would be like, oh, you missed something. And I'd be like, oh, okay. But in a video, it's like, it's done, right? Like you have to travel through time to fix it. So, I posted it and it got an okay reception. Like it wasn't like this is a complete disaster, but I was just thinking about like the way I've dealt with this stuff. And it's crazy that like, I know that it's not a big deal. Like I made a mistake in a video game and then posted the video on YouTube. Mm-hmm. But then like when I see like, oh, this has an 87% like to dislike ratio, usually it's at like 98. It feels like your personal safety is affected or something. It feels like you left a scalpel inside somebody after you perform surgery on them. So, what I used to do is like, I would go into the video comments and I would respond and be like, hey guys, sorry, like I made a mistake. I think that's just a good thing to do in general still. But then like you see comments that are really rude and then I would just shadow ban them all. And I'm not talking about like, oh, you missed this. That's fine. But like comments that are like actually really rude. I'm like, well, see you later.
So did you shadow ban anyone on the death and taxes video?
I want to own up to that. I looked at a lot of comments and I was like, oh, I should shadow ban these people. And then I took a step back and I was like, you know what? I should be mature. I made a mistake. These are people who like your content and they're just riled up. Tomorrow, they'll be posting on, your next video and be like, this game looks really good. Then like an hour later, after the emotions had come down a little bit, I went back and I shadow banned about a third of them because the stuff that they said was just truly unacceptable. But the delta of the 2/3 there got saved by my new approach. And I want to be clear. It wasn't like I didn't like this video. Yeah. I'm like, oh, get out of here. I'm like, that's fine. But there are people like, some people just take it one step too far. And it doesn't actually like, it doesn't dampen my mood, but it just makes me be like, I'm just disappointed, I guess, when I read it. Like one of them was like, hey, I hate to say it, but I had to dislike this video. And I'm like, okay, I didn't even know that, but still, you failed at basic reading comprehension. Okay, a little ruder for sure. Then they put one more line that was like, it's embarrassing that you used to be a teacher. And I was like, that's just rude. That's a personal attack. So, but I think, I've been rambling for a bit here, but I want to actually take the approach that like, I think is very easy. And it has been very easy for me in the past to look at that and double down and be like, it's not that big of a deal. Screw all the people that are leaving negative comments. And instead, I thought, maybe it's not a big deal to me, but maybe it's a big deal to someone for some reason. And it's hard for me to empathize with that, to be honest. But I can meet them halfway and be like, hey, I screwed up today. And, I hope you'll be back tomorrow to watch. But, it is what it is.
I was surprised, and I'm just connecting the dots. Now, I saw you send a tweet out. It's like, hey, sorry about this video. And I didn't think much about it. I'm like, what is he, there must be a reason why that was. And I just felt like that was something I'd never seen from you on social media before.
So I did that. And this is the podcast where we really break it down. Yeah. I did that because the developers replied to the video and were like, thanks for playing the game, which is fine. Yeah. But then like somebody whose username I recognize and had left like 6 comments on that video, who I did not shadow ban, by the way, in case they're watching, you're still okay. But they left a comment that's like, you guys really did a disservice to this game by sending it to this guy. You should care more about like the optics of how your game is perceived in the future. And I was like, man, that's like...
You're taking a shot at the throne there.
Basically, first off, why are you getting in the developers mentions over Like they got some exposure out of the video at the very least. But moreover, it puts the devs in like a super awkward place where they have to be like, haha, or like shut up, I guess. And they went like, it's okay. I hope that like people enjoyed the video anyway, which was nice. But I was like, okay, maybe I did do not an amazing job of showing off the game. So I sent another tweet that was like, hey, watch someone else play the game and check it out if you're interested, just to kind of send a message to them that's like, hey, I didn't go into the video trying to screw up and like, blow up your game or anything like that. It was just, accidents happen.
No, I think that's interesting because that adds another layer of complexity that most of the time doesn't get involved. Is if you mess up on a video, chances are, I mean, I'll just say it because I know you won't. If you're playing a game on your channel, a developer is going to be really, really excited because I don't think it's in your vernacular, your DNA to bash a game. I've never really seen you bash a game.
I'm a pretty like soft critic, to be honest.
Yeah, so I'm sure they're excited that you're covering the game, but it's unique that I've never heard of that, like kind of prisoner's dilemma of, they either bite the hand that may buy a game or bite the hand that's exposing the game to the person that may buy the game. But it's a whole different
I'm interested in your philosophy too. And again, like I'll say it because you're not going to take offense. There's been a couple of videos I've watched where I was like, he's missing an element of the mechanics that would really allow this to pop. Like your Cadence of Hyrule video, you were on one screen for like 15 minutes. But I feel like, and I don't know if maybe, and I'm sure you'll talk about it, I don't know if it's like part of the way that the communities came together in the first place, or even like it's a reflection of the content creator themselves. But I feel like you don't get blowback to that same level of extent. Like people don't seem as seriously annoyed when you make a mistake that's on the same level. I'm not saying it's unfair. I'm just saying that's an observation.
I think it's a very fair observation, very accurate one, because I think that for the most part, and it all depends, but I think for the most part, people are not going to watch me to show off all the mechanics of a game, and maybe some of the entertainment is people like expecting me to leave a critical part out and then having fun with it. But at the same time, like there are times when I'll play a game, I'm like, all right, let me analyze this from top to bottom and put on it and just show the game off so that people can understand it. But it just happens. And I think for me, my approach is that I kind of know right away, like after I start a video, I'm like, okay, hey, this game is for me or it's not for me. And when I get to that point, I'll kind of just say, all right, hey, look, I'm going to have some fun with this. I know this is probably not the way it's played or maybe not my kind of game. It doesn't mean it's a bad game. I'm just saying, but if you like this kind of game, I try to just give it juice. It's like, hey, this is a good game. It's just not in my wheelhouse. But I do feel like the community and audience that watches my stuff is very forgiving about a lot of that stuff. And I don't know if it's because their expectations are lower of me actually doing well in a game or if I just kind of take it laissez-faire. I don't know. But for me, the way I process that kind of feedback is that if it's really, even we talked about, I think in episode 1, if it's really someone just lambasting me, those are, and this is, I'm not trying to do this to encourage more of these comments, but those are ones I'm really apt to respond to because I feel like those are people that may just need to lash out. I don't think it's our job to be a punching bag, but maybe sometimes we can identify it and just say, hey, look, you're having a bad day. Maybe you'll like the videos tomorrow or whatever. But I just don't take that stuff too seriously. And I think that the hard thing is on the content creator side, or the unique proposition, is that I think to stay even keeled, you can't care about the great comments or like super positive ones, and you can't care about the super negative ones. Because if you're like, oh yeah, this is the greatest video in the world, and that's all you intake all the time, it's not good. And on the same thing, the flip side, like if, oh, my videos are terrible, I just kind of, and it's the interesting thing about feedback is that you and I talk about is that I don't let either way affect me, but I still listen to it because it still tells you what people want to see. It's like, can you remove that, your personal element of their coming at you? If you can do that, I think to me, it's been a big unlock that has allowed me to navigate and create content that people want to see versus what I think they want to see.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And that's like, I've been trying to get there for a long time. And I think I'm there like plus or minus like one day every 6 months. Mm-hmm. It used to be one day a month. maybe then one day every 6 weeks, but we're at like once every 6 months now, where I really do genuinely, like, if I look at a negative comment, like a couple of things, if it's grossly negative, a couple of things enter my mind. The first one is, you've left 7 angry comments on this one 20-minute video about a video game. Like, that's honestly like kind of sad.
Mhm.
Like, that's I empathize with like the fact that you are this upset by this. It says more about the person leaving the comment than it does about me, and not in a way that's like, oh, I burned them. It's more in the way that's just like, clearly something's out of whack there. And then on top of that, I'm also like, if you care enough to leave a comment, most of these people, they didn't like just like make a drive by, like, oh, hey, I found your video randomly and you suck. Most of it is like, hey, I've watched 250 videos of yours, in 2019 and 2020. This one's not amongst the best. And I'm like, okay, I can live with that. Like, that's fair. And I think you and I have seen, I mean, we have similar philosophies, I think. Seen like a lot of content creators really lose their direction to some extent, and even like their mental health, focusing either entirely on super positive comments, like you said, or super negative comments, or even like what I see all the time is focusing on so much of the positivity that even stuff that's fair criticism, or just positive but not overwhelmingly positive, comes across as toxic to them.
Yeah, and I feel like we're talking about this subject. I don't think it's easy because there's no handbook. There really aren't a ton of examples out there for someone like you or I or anyone creating content of like, hey, here's like a really good way to go about doing it, which I think one of the things I really enjoy about doing the podcast is it's like a sounding board for us to be okay, hey, what's going well with you and vice versa. But I truly believe when you can get to the point, and it's not easy, it's like you can take your hands off the steering wheel for the most part and let the audience drive. It's just like, this is what, if you can figure out why people are watching you, then you can make more of that, and then it does better and better. But if you listen, then they kind of just tell you, they tell you, do more of this and do less of this. And I think sometimes it's hard. It can be hard if you're really looking forward to something or a piece of content or something you put out there and it gets bombed, they bomb it. Like, you can't take that personal. It's like, all right, forehead, just don't take it personal. But there just isn't a roadmap out there of how to do what you and I are trying to do or what we're doing for our life. So I think it's, just my thing is just stay in the middle and don't go too far one way or another. So another thing that I want to pivot to is that we talked a little bit, I think, in episode 1, and it's been on our list for a while. We talk about idle hobbies, right? So I don't know about you, but when I'm done streaming or recording videos, really the last thing I want to do is play video games. I try to find things outside of that, not even find, but just out of, I just don't want to. I don't have a motivation to play games outside of creating content. But we talk about idle hobbies, and you've done a lot of development in that, from programming. I know you're taking Korean lessons. What do you do when you're not making content?
I think I'm glad to have an opportunity to answer this, because I answered it in that like TikTok Q&A that I did, but you only get 45 seconds to elucidate a response, right? But I agree 100%. I've heard a lot of content creators say like, oh, doing this as like making videos and streaming has killed my desire to play games off camera. And I understand and I kind of agree, but I don't think it's like, people always seem to prescribe that to the fact that now that you're doing it for work, there's like an element where you don't want to do it for fun. Like, oh, I want to be on all the time. For me, it's more like I've already done it for 8 hours. I've already done it for 10 hours, 6 days in a row. So like when I get off of the computer, like I don't want to, or when I get off of stream, for example, I don't want to just play more video games, which I think is honestly why I watch a little bit more TV than like the average person in our demographic. Like when people are like, you still have cable? I'm like, yeah, you might have cable too. If you streamed or made videos 8 hours a day, you don't want to play any more video games sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's a really positive benefit. That's something that it almost just kind of, not that you don't think about it, but very fortunate. I feel very grateful that your hobby as a kid or something you're passionate about, you get to do for work. So it's like, all right, you get to check the box of, hey, did I have fun today? Really is, did I work today? And so I think it's a lot of fun. And I think about a tweet, and I don't know the situation about it, but I saw a tweet once from someone that I follow there on Twitch and YouTube and do all that stuff. And it's like, hey, I was recommended to try and find a hobby outside of creating video games. So I started watching NHL or NBA or UFC, and like, then you kind of see that person start soaring a little bit more. And I just feel like for me, I think, and it just kind of hit me now, is like just checking the box of like, we get to have fun for work, which is pretty awesome.
That's why I say it all the time. Like, I'm like, the duties of doing this job are easy. Like, I don't know about you. I'm sure you probably do. I have people that are constantly telling me, like, not in my life, but like in the comments or in chat, like, work less, work less, work less. And I'm like, it's so easy to work more because I love doing it. And it's not hard. It's not like someone is like, oh, I love landscaping. Like, I would look at that person and be like, well, it's amazing for one. That's awesome for you that you can do your passion, but I don't get it.
Yeah.
But like for this, I'm like, you just are playing with toys all day, basically. So yeah, I definitely like it's certainly not like a lack of love for games or for the industry even at large. It's more just like I'm satisfied every day. Like I'm satiated with the amount I play.
Yeah, and I think like for the landscaper, I think that I know that there are people out there that feel about landscaping and that may be their job or their business that feel the same way like you and I do. I think they're just lucky enough to have found it, and same with us. But when it comes to like, I got a question. I did a Q&A podcast. It was just like, hey, what are you most looking forward to in this upcoming year? And I'm like, I just like my day to day. Like I'm traveling for a couple days and it's like pseudo vacation, like / wedding. And I'm like, I'm cool with like, I just like my everyday. Like I don't really, right now, I don't feel like I need a vacation at all. I mean, it's just out of, just the way things lined up.
Yeah.
But like, I just love like every day. It's like every day it's work and it's fun. But that's what I look forward to. I'm not looking forward to like, and it sounds kind of weird and not to be ungrateful, but it'll be fun to like, get away for a few days. But I know at the end of a few days, I'm gonna be like, hey, like I want to get back. Yeah, I want to get back home. I want to get to work and have more fun. But I think that's something that I always try to communicate because I don't take it for granted. I think you and I and anyone else that is able to do this, it's super unique. And I say it can go away like this, but I think it can go away like that by your own hand. And so I'm just always very grateful of just the support and people like, and you kind of hit it when you said when people leave a negative comment that may have watched 250 episodes, they still care enough about what you're doing to leave a comment. It's maybe the day when you post a video, I'm not saying this can happen, but you post a video and it's just crickets. Like you're going to wish you had
That's a bad day. Yeah. Well, I guess like, I agree with all that for sure. And one thing that's been interesting for me, and I'll pivot off of this back to what you were saying earlier, like what do I do when I'm not streaming? Because I think it's an interesting topic. But like, I also genuinely love what I do to the extent that on Saturdays, which are my day off, I'm like stupid productive at other stuff just because I feel, I don't want to call it like a guilt, but I'm like, I don't want that idle time that much. Now maybe I want it later in the day, but like when I wake up on a Saturday, I'm like, okay, let's set Sunday's videos and like let's look at what's coming out this week, and I'll send a list of stuff to David that he could get in touch to get codes for. And then I don't know, that only takes like 45 minutes to an hour. So like, okay, let's shave, shower, I'm gonna like clean the kitchen, like Kate's up, let's go get groceries, like I've got to go to the bank and do some stuff. And like I really want to like go on my day off even. I think just because like, I don't know, it's like we got so lucky to get in a job where doing it productively is actually very, very easy. I think it like rewired part of my personality to want to do that with other stuff as well, over time at least.
So you kind of bring up something that I'm like, man, that's me. And it's, I don't know if it's concerning, but I've like, do you relax? Like I'm thinking in my head, like if I'm relaxing, like it takes me a long time to get to the point where I'm not thinking about, hey, this is like, I can post a TikTok or I can respond to these texts, or but it's like, cause I enjoy that. It's not because, I mean, maybe it's a little bit of obsession, but I just really enjoy it. But like, I have a hard time of like, I have to deliberately, like when I go home, like when I get home at 5 o'clock or 5:30, my phone is away and I'm like, I take physical steps to like lock in because that's important to me. But if I don't do that, it's like, I mean, I'm working. I don't like, do you have a hard time relaxing, or how do you like, have you noticed, hey, if you do this, then you can relax?
I think like I don't know. I have complicated thoughts on that. One thing I would say for sure is that like I think it's a little different for you because you have kids.
Mhm.
And with kids you have such like a limited window of, I mean they're only going to be one for a year, they're only going to
Yeah.
be, not in school for a few years, they're only going to be little for et cetera, et cetera. So like obviously like making the most of your making sure that you're there and present during that time is really important. It's not to say like Kate and I don't have a similar thing going on with our relationship, but we're also like independent people
Mhm.
and we're planning on being around for a while, right? So like she does her own thing a lot and I do my own thing a lot, even in our off hours, and we'll get together and like eat dinner and maybe watch a movie or something like that and talk things out. But it's not to the same extent with kids where it's like you have to be there or you're gonna regret it,
Yeah.
like when they're older.
Dude, you kind of struck a chord with me. I don't know where I saw it on Twitter, but it was like this bell curve of where you spend time and with who. And it was like like for you, it'd say your time with your parents. It's like a bell curve until age 18, and then just a slow like decrease because you move away, you go
Yeah.
to college, you get married, and so I was just thinking about that when you're saying that. And it's like, I'm lucky that I'm able to make decisions and be in control of, hey, when I do this and this. But man, I mean, you hit it on the head. Like I was almost, when you're saying that, I'm like, hey, let's hurry up and wrap up this podcast. So I'm just joking, but it does, like, that stuff crossed my mind a lot, and that's one of the things. And not a struggle. I would not say a struggle, but something I always think about is like, all right, hey, like, where can I work and where can I not? And I don't think you ever really know what the right answer is. I just go off feel, right? So there could be a time, and I think we talked about this a little bit. There could be a time when I cut a stream short, or do like what I say I'm going to do and not go extra because I'm like, hey, like I didn't get a chance to see my kids this morning or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like going back and forth. But I think for me, it's just always been listening to kind of internally, hey, what's the move, and how do you want to do it? But so in terms of idle hobbies, I don't want to get too far from that. So what do you do when you're not streaming for fun?
Honestly, like I have one more thing I wanted to
Yeah.
say because it's a hot take.
Yeah.
It's going to be great for engagement,
Okay.
maybe bad for my mentions.
Okay.
But I understand why this is, and we don't have to get into that.
Yeah.
But I think there's hustle culture for sure. That's like you should be doing something productive at all times.
Mhm.
And then there's also like a big blowback of anti-hustle culture that is like you should work, not the bare minimum, but you should work as much as is necessary. And then, your life is the thing that you should be focused on, the stuff that actually enriches you on, for lack of a better word, like a spiritual level.
Mhm.
And for me, I'm like, whenever I mention like, oh, when I finish streaming, like, I'm going to like edit together some videos and, maybe I'll like record some more videos. People are always like, well, some people are often like, you should work less, you should do less. But those are almost like those are the things that I get the most pleasure out of, to be honest, is like not just being productive, but doing something that is fun to do for one. But then when I post it, I get to get feedback from other people that is like, oh, this was really cool, I had a great time watching it. So I always think like we talked about it in episode 1. The problem for me with idle hobbies is I think when you're enjoying them, they're great. But if I actually audit my own time, I'm like only like 20% of it is actually juice. And then the other 80% is just like mindlessly kind of like zoned out looking at the screen. And when I'm doing something like, I don't know, like people are obviously cynical on TikTok to some extent, but when I'm like editing stuff for TikTok, the hour and a half, 2 hours that it takes to do like 7 of those flies by, and I'm having a great time. Like that to me feels like it's recharging. So really like for idle stuff, I will watch like when they're on at 7 p.m. local time, I'll watch most of the Canucks games.
Mhm.
That's about it. Like, and then on Saturdays, whatever,
Like go out
and
to
maybe
dinner.
like, yeah, exactly. And maybe like on top of that, and we talked about wasting time in like the first episode as well. There are like inefficiencies in my day for sure. But in terms of like, oh, I'm just going to take like an hour and do nothing. It happens, but usually it happens when I try to do something productive and the juices just are not flowing. And I go, this doesn't have to happen tonight. I'm not going to be productive at this. Let's just, do whatever I want to do instead. And I think that's like, it's the same for you, like just feeling out, like, when does this feel right and when does it feel wrong?
So where does learning Korean, what bucket, or where does that fall in for you? Is it like necessity? Is it desire? Is it fun? Is it?
I put it like a midway between like necessity and desire. It's reasonably fun,
Mhm.
but I think that's just because I have a propensity for book learning to some extent anyway. But mostly that's like after work, I'll cook dinner, and then it might be like 9:30 or 10 p.m. and I got 2 hours, and I'm like, well, I could do like 90 minutes of Korean studying right now and kind of fit it in. I've been hammering at this for a while, and I don't think it's very resonant. And I'm wondering why that is, but I'm like, it's more fun to learn than it is to queue up for 2 hours of League, lose 2 or 3 matches, and then like go to bed angry. But whenever people are very, and I'm not saying I haven't been here and won't be here again, people are very protective. If you're like, what if you played one game of League and then spent like 1 hour, I don't know, reading a book or something like that? People are like, oh, well, I guess we shouldn't have fun anymore. It's illegal to have fun. Every minute of your day should be spent productively, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but like only like half of that is a time you're actually enjoying. The other half is just like, or worse, you feel like compelled to play because you're like, oh, if I don't play, I'm going to fall behind in my season ranking or something like that.
Yeah, I think you kept saying a word, and it's a word that I think about a lot too. Say should, and I feel like whenever I say I should do something or I should be doing this internally, I'm like most of the time it's something I don't really want to be doing. So then that's like an indicator to me if I should do this and I don't want to. I either need to not do it and then stop thinking about it, or just do it and get it over with. But I think also kind of the missing piece of what you're saying about playing like League or and then doing Korean is that you're playing essentially League for 8 hours a day with work anyway. So it's like,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's for me. And I think this has been, we talked earlier about judgment and like, or a little bit about not caring when you put something out, what maybe people in your inner circle or your family care about. But for me, a really big unlock was just that, like, and I learned it from someone like kind of a mentor in real life. It's just, I went to him one day. I'm like, hey, why is this person doing this? And he looked at me, he's like, why does it matter? I'm like, what? He's like, why does it matter what they're doing? And I remember that moment very vividly because that person wasn't like, it was something like something went wrong. But the moral of the story is like, they weren't hurting anyone, they weren't doing anything. So why should I care? And that's kind of how I approach things. Like, as long as someone, and this is not trying to be a hot take, but as long as someone is not doing harm to themselves or someone else, I don't really care what they're doing. Like you may see someone, sometimes I got to check myself on it, but sometimes, I'll be driving in the car and someone will change lanes and they won't use a blinker. And I'm like, I got to catch myself. I'm like, but it is what it is. Yeah, there's rules to follow, but I can't worry about that. So and it's really helped me a lot with a lot of things is like, and even in what we do, and I think I've always kind of thought this, but I don't look at what we do as like a competitive landscape in terms of, it's not a zero-sum game. Like, I think you can win, I can win, a million people can win at what we're doing, winning, which is whatever your definition of success is. But I don't look at like you having a great video of the same game or beating Bennett Foddy affects me at all. Like, it doesn't affect that I can't do the same thing. And I feel like that's sometimes where people get themselves in trouble, whether either what we do or in life, is like, just don't worry about why someone does something if it's not really affecting you. And just like that may make someone happy. Someone landscaping for their business or job or spending 8 hours a day after work doing that's their thing. So like, that's cool. But that was for me something that was a really big game changer, is just don't worry about why someone does something. And then a lot of things become easier. I don't know how we got on that diatribe, but
I yell at people when I drive all the time. I don't know. That habit is not on my to-do list to change. I love it. I get a lot of pleasure out of it.
So, all right. So idle hobbies. So for you, you take Korean, you work out, you watch a Canucks game.
Yeah.
Go to a Canucks game.
Now and then. Yeah.
And those are your deals.
Pretty much. Yeah. I'll watch I don't know. I watch a couple of movies a week. And, I mean, the other thing is, and this is like, we don't need to talk about it at all, but we have time where we title videos, upload videos, edit videos. I can have something up on my second monitor that is almost like having an idle hobby combined with like productivity. So it's not like I'm just locked in like a hermetically sealed office at all times. Like I'm consuming some level of media now and then.
Like, what will you have on that second monitor if it's not a Canucks game?
Usually, like, well, it's been frustrating. I'm glad you brought it up because when I'm doing this stuff, it's like 10 p.m. Pacific time, and the only person in our circle who's live on Twitch is Apollo, but he's making Mario Maker levels that I'm not even supposed to watch. So I'm like, I don't even know what to watch anymore. So I just sometimes I just have the Google Chrome home window open, and I just look at it for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, I'll just get started, I guess.
Do you ever do Twitch roulette or anything like that? Will you ever explore other people outside of our circle to watch Twitch, or not very often?
Honestly, never. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I don't, I guess. I don't know. Like I feel like a lot of the pleasure that I derive from a Twitch stream is knowing the person that's doing it, which, you know, I also think is one of the reasons that people, when they start watching somebody, they get like sticky because they're like into the community, the in jokes. When you go into chat, people are like, oh, hey, you know, I know who you are. And like going into somebody else's chat and then like I type like, it's very like streamer brain, but like if I type like great shot or something like that and nobody says like that's NL, I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm wasting my time.
It's like at least you want to walk into the Cheers bar and just be like, hey, you know, it's good to see you. And they know who you are. They know what your favorite drink is versus you walk into, you know, some fancy club and you're like, hey, what's this dude doing here?
What are your idle hobbies? I mean, again, I want to stress this for people listening at home. It blows my mind that Dan is as productive as he is while having 2 children as well. Because like it's sucking up a staggering amount of time. I don't want to frame it like it's a negative thing, obviously, but like, you know, they take a lot of attention.
No, it's a lot of fun. But for me, and I think the only, like, so I like to run, but the idle hobbies that I used to have or that are on like the to-do list is I took karate for like 10 years ago and I found a similar style. So I did that for about 6 to 8 months, but it started to get to a point where it's like, all right, I'll just be honest. It's either I can go to karate or I can work more. And eventually it kind of like phased out. And then same thing with piano lessons. I was taking piano lessons, not like concurrently. But I do feel like I need something to kind of rewind. And you know, I kind of talked about this about like the Tuesday. I need something to just unplug. So I think I'm going to lean back towards taking piano, even if it's just going off the foundation that I've learned and just kind of self-teaching. But something I feel like outside of working out, I need something else, especially right now. That's just not gaming, not work, not family, but just something else, just completely removed. I feel like that really helps me. And it's just like anything else that you'll probably hear me say a lot is just, I just listen to myself a lot. And like, I'll hear like some of the songs we play. There's one song in particular I played during the show and it's just this really beautiful piano song. And there's this like 10-second where I'm like, I just feel it. I'm like, I need to be working on that. And so I just try to listen to myself as much as possible. And right now that's kind of like the thing that's inside that I'm listening to is just kind of get piano going again. And it's funny. I think I may have talked about this a little bit, but not to get on a diatribe about piano, but piano is, if you've never played, it's like you'll struggle with something for 15 minutes and walk away. You'll do the same thing 2 days later, same thing 3 days later. Then on the 4th or 5th day, you'll just do it. And you're like, how did I do that? I couldn't do that a day ago. And I think it just plays into something in the brain that we don't fully comprehend, but it's a cool feeling when you're able to do that. And I'm sure maybe it's similar with some of the things that you've done, but to me that I've never really experienced that until I started playing piano, where you just do something and you're like, holy cow, like there's no way I could have done that a week ago. I think that's kind of cool.
Honestly, that's how it works in Guitar Hero. That's the only thing that I have the same kind of reference to is like you'd play a song Guitar Hero and be like, this is too hard. And then you sleep and wake up and then you're like, oh, I got it.
But isn't that like, to me, that's astonishing that because like you haven't changed at all. Like your approach to it isn't any different, but now you just get it. Like, what the heck is that?
I think like while you sleep, well, I don't know. I'm not a cognitive scientist, but I think my theory is while you sleep, your brain is like, we're going to practice that guitar stuff. Cause clearly that was really important to him today. So then when you wake up, you've rewired some neural connections.
And just to kind of tie that in, put a bow tie on this. Do you think that's how you are in Isaac? Like, are you fully on autopilot when you play Isaac, like mechanically?
Yeah, I don't notice a difference in my play when I focus or don't focus.
It's
essentially,
it's
just there.
Is it like driving though for you? Like, do you?
Yeah, like it's scary. Like you know how like you can drive for like an hour,
Yeah.
and when you get to the destination, you don't remember anything about the drive.
Yeah.
It's like that's what Isaac is like. Like I'll finish an episode and I'll be like, I remember almost nothing at all about what happened in this episode.
Well, speaking of not remembering anything that happened at all in this episode, this is the end of episode 3 of the podcast. We got a couple announcements. One, there is a separate feed on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. So you can just find Check the Wire. If you just type that into your preferred podcast, you can find it there, or go to checkthewire.com. And you can check out the VOD if you want to see our sparkling faces at youtube.com/Northernlion. Brian, episode 4. We got a lot of topics. We're just scratching the surface.
Every time we talk, we fill up a sheet with like 10 topics. We talk about 4 of them, and the 4 topics we talk about make like another 9 pop up. And people were worried we were going to run out of stuff. That's just insanity.
You may have to add a digit to the numbers on the podcast. Well, that being said, I think I haven't run this by Ryan, but I think leave a review on iTunes or wherever you prefer to leave them. iTunes, any kind of rating is good, with constructive feedback, and maybe if I can get Ryan to agree to it, we'll read them off at the end of the episode.
It sounds good to me. Right. And yeah, if you're watching on the YouTube side, leave some timestamps of stuff that you enjoyed. Probably should have said that at the start of the episode. It would have been a little bit more helpful for you, but you can go back and do some of my labor for me if you really like something that we said.
Well, I'm personally looking forward to the first Twitter video or first TikTok video about the podcast. I'm going to imagine it's going to be the best of the best from Ryan. No pressure at all. But thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you guys next Tuesday, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Pacific for your morning commute, workout, jog. Maybe you're driving home from the night shift. But thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.